When I started studying art history, I nearly quit. I'm serious. The first topic we covered was Vincent van Gogh. And before anyone gets upset, I know he's one of the most beloved artists in the world, but I felt like I had already heard everything there was to hear. I wasn't inspired. I was excited. I wasn't excited. I remember sitting there wondering whether I had made a mistake enrolling in an art history degree at all. And then we reached the Benin Bronzes. Suddenly there was history, politics, colonialism, questions about ownership, questions about museums, questions about power, and I was hooked. To this day, I think the Benin Bronzes are one of the best examples of why art history matters. Because this story isn't really about bronzes, it's about people. Welcome to Room for Colors. I'm Tina, art historian and creativity educator, and this is art history with plenty of color and zero dust. This is the episode 5 of our series on colonialism and art, and today we are talking about one of the most famous restitution cases in the world. First, let's clear up something that often confuses people. The Kingdom of Benin and the Republic of Benin are not the same thing. The Kingdom of Benin is located in what is today Nigeria. It was a powerful kingdom with a rich artistic tradition, a royal court, and highly skilled craft people who produced extraordinary works in brass, ivory, wood, and other materials. And at the center of this kingdom stood the Oba, the king, the spiritual and political leader, and yes, there is still an Oba today. This matters because sometimes people talk about the Benin Bronzes as if they belong to a civilization that disappeared centuries ago. But it didn't. The culture is still there, the people are still there, and the story is still being told. When you hear the term Benin Bronzes, they often imagine a few statues. In reality, we are talking about thousands of objects, plaques, masks, sculptures, objects used in ceremonies, objects that recorded history, objects that showed rulers, various court life, and important events. And this is one of the reasons why they are so important. The Kingdom of Benin relied heavily on oral history. Stories were passed from generation to generation. The plaques helped preserve those stories. They were not simply decoration. They were memory. And now we come to the uncomfortable part. The Kingdom of Benin traded with Europeans for centuries. This wasn't a hidden kingdom cut off from the world. Portuguese traders arrived as early as the 15th century, and Benin produced luxury goods that were highly sought after in Europe. But there was one thing the British increasingly disliked. The Oba controlled trade. He decided when trade happened. He decided who was allowed access. And most importantly, he could say no. That self-confident no became a problem. By the end of the 19th century, Britain wanted greater control over trade in the region, especially palm oil and other valuable resources. Benin insisted on setting its own conditions, and British wanted unrestricted access. Benin wanted sovereignty, and eventually those positions collided. In January 1897, a British delegation traveled towards Benin City. The timing could hardly have been worse. Important religious ceremonies were taking place. The Oba sent a warning that the delegation should not enter the city at that moment. The warning was ignored. On the road of the city, members of the delegation were attacked and killed. In Britain, this became a justification for what followed. A so-called punitive expedition. I always find that phrase strangely polite. Punitive expedition. It sounds administrative, almost harmless. It wasn't. British troops entered Benin City. The royal palace was burned. People were killed, and thousands of artworks were removed from the kingdom. Flags, heads, figures, ivories, an archive of a civilization packed into crates and shipped to Europe. Many were sold. Many ended up in museums. Today they can be found in London, Berlin, Paris, and many other cities around the world. And this is where my opinion becomes very simple. I think they should go back. Not some of them, not eventually. Not when every committee has finished discussing it, I think they belong in Benin. People often say that museums have preserved them. That's true. People say millions of visitors have learned from them. That's also true. But neither of these things changes how they arrived there. If we know where something came from, if we know how it was taken, and if the people it was taken from are still asking for it back, then I struggle to see the argument of keeping it. What sometimes frustrates me is how abstract this debate becomes. We talk about collections, museum institutions, governments, but rarely about people. So let me make it personal. The current Oba of Benin has repeatedly spoken about the importance of these objects for the history and identity of his people. And I have a dream. One day I would love to sit down with the Oba and talk about the Benin Bronzes. Because I would love to hear the stories from his perspective. Because I think too much of this conversation has happened in European museums and European universities. And not enough of it has happened in Benin. A few years ago, scientists discovered that some of the brass used in the bronze originally came from Europe through trade networks. Some headlines suddenly appeared claiming that the Benin Bronzes were somehow German. And honestly, that drove me slightly mad. The raw materials may have traveled through Europe, but that doesn't make the artwork European. The paint on my canvas might be from China. That doesn't make my paintings Chinese. Art is more than raw materials. Art is ideas, skill, culture, meaning, story. And the story of the Benin Bronzes belongs to Benin. For me, the Benin Bronzes are not primarily museum objects. They are a history book. A history book that was taken from the people who wrote it. And yes, museums have cared for many of those objects. But preserving a story and owning a story are not the same thing. The Benin Bronzes reminds us that colonialism is not ancient history. Its consequences are still sitting behind glass cases all over Europe, and every time I see one, I find myself thinking the same thing. What would it feel like to see it back in its home country? For me, this one is not of the complicated cases. There are restitution debates where I genuinely struggle. The Parthenon marbles, for example, raise questions I'm still thinking about. But the Benin Bronzes? Not really. They belong in Benin. And if I could choose one dream interview as an art historian, it would not be with a museum director. It would be with the Oba of Benin, sitting in Benin City, surrounded by the bronzes that have finally come home, listening to the stories they were always meant to tell. And with this little dream, I end this episode. Take good care.